Hi guys, welcome back to Battle with Ola. This is Mujela Olu, and today we want to talk about implied terms and express terms. Express terms and implied terms. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, join the channel, leave comments in the comment section, like the videos when you've seen them. Let's talk about express terms and implied terms. This is particularly important for contracts and for contracting generally. We've done videos on contracts and contractual relationships and obligations on this channel. Please go watch them. Check the description box also for all the goodies that we have before you log out after seeing this video. An express term, as the name may imply, is a term that is clearly stated in a contract. It is clear, it is unambiguous, and it is agreed upon by both or all parties to the contract. So we call it an express term. For instance, if I'm entering into a contract for the supply of mangoes with you now watching this video, and then we execute a contract where I say that you will supply me 10 bags of mangoes weekly, at the rate of 10,000 naira per bag, and you will supply it every last Wednesday of the month, and I will pay you in installments of 5,000 naira each, twice after each supply and before the next supply. Those are clear express terms. You would note that in those terms now we've talked about the item to be supplied, we've talked about the duration clause, we've talked about the consideration clause, we've talked about the payment clause, so many clauses that we have talked about. Those terms are express. What is an implied term? An implied term is a term that is not expressly stated, but that can be imputed into the contract to say that, oh, maybe the parties would have intended for this to happen, but they did not spell it out in clear terms and letters, or terms that can be implied from how the court has decided over the years, or what is obtainable generally in the industry or in that particular sector, or how customs and conventions have gone over the years. Those are terms that we call implied terms. For instance, according to the Sales of Goods Act, it is implied that goods supplied are supplied in reasonably good condition. That's an implied term. So when we say supply mangoes 10,000 naira last Wednesday of the month, blah blah blah, those are express, but impliedly the mangoes you're supplying have to be in reasonably good condition. So I don't need to spell that out because it is expected. That's what an implied term is. Now the major differences between the two are, their origin and their incorporation into the contract. Implied terms, like I have said, originate from different things. One, how the court has decided, from common law, from judicial precedents, from industry standards, customs, conventions, from what could be the intention of parties. Those are the origins of implied terms. While express terms, their origin is the party, what the party wants, and that's what they've put down. So it originates from the parties directly, not what the court has decided in some other cases that may be binding in their own case. So that's the origin, and then we talk about the incorporation. Express terms are brought into the contract at the beginning of the contract. Once there's a consensus addendum, agreement of the minds, that these are the terms that we seek and wish to be bound by. So express terms are incorporated at the beginning of the contract, but implied terms may come into the contract along the way, or when the contract has even been executed, or when there's a dispute, and they come much later. So those are the major differences. In any case, both implied and express terms are binding on both or all parties to a contract. They are lawful, they are legal, and they are binding. Very important. Now, where an implied term and an express term clash, the express term will prevail. Now, where an implied term and an express term collide or clash, conflict, the express term will prevail, because that is the express wish of the parties. But also note that express terms need not be written down. It could be verbal, oral. If the contract is oral, then the terms would largely be oral. As such, an express term could be orally conveyed and agreed upon by both parties. Now, why do we have implied terms? We have them because, a contract cannot, in all cases, preempt all exigencies. That is to say that there's something called the unforeseeable future, which, sometimes comes into play in a contract. The reason why implied terms will defer to express terms where there's a conflict is that the court will not vary contracts between parties. So the court would most likely and in most cases respect the wishes of the parties as expressed. But the court will also impute these implied terms, as is reasonably possible. For instance, when giving out a property to let, when letting out a property, it is an implied term. For instance, when letting out a property, it is impliedly a clause or a term or a part of the contract that the landlord is giving out to the tenant a building or premises that are in a tenantable condition. That is in a condition that the tenant can move in and live in it conveniently. So that's implied. You may not need to spell it out, but you may spell it out if you wish. So this is what an implied term is and what express terms are. So it's important to note the difference. I remember that one time, we had a lease issue. I think I've spoken about it on the channel. I was mediating a lease dispute, and the drafter of the lease agreement, the lawyer who drafted it, had omitted a rent review clause. Now, rent review is very important in tenancies and leases. He had not included it, but the defendant, that is the respondent to the complaint, argued. No, it was even the complainant that filed the matter. So the complainant who brought the matter, who was the lessor's inheritor, argued. The lawyer representing them argued that this is an implied term. It is implied that in any contract for tenancy or for lease, rent review is part of it, whether you include it or not. That is, at some point, parties need to sit together and review the rent, either upwards or downwards according to the economic realities and a few other factors. So I had to agree with him on that basis, and then we had to now discuss and negotiate, a review figure. So that's an implied term. If, for instance, you have gone to see a doctor, at the back, I'm just using this one is a layman's example just for you to understand. If you've gone to see a doctor now, it is implied that the doctor knows his job. He knows what he's doing. He's a doctor, and he will treat you, he will give you the best medical care. So where he fails, then it becomes a breach of his duty. But you cannot begin to now try to ascertain his fitness or his ability to treat you properly or give you good medical care. That duty is not on you. It is implied that if he's holding out himself as a doctor working in the medical facility and he has been assigned to treat you, he is able to do so. So that is how to understand what is implied. What any reasonable person would just assume that, this should be part of it, this should be the proper position. So we don't need to state it expressly. But it is advisable to always state all terms. As soon as you remember it, as soon as you call it to mind, whatever term is important to you, please make it express. It's better that way. Although your contract cannot, in reality and practically, contain all terms and conditions that apply to the contract, but as much as possible, make sure that all the important things are factored in and expressly stated, whether it is a oral contract or a written contract. I hope you understand implied terms now. In the last video we did on Iberima Fides, remember that I said that Iberima Fide is an implied term in a contract, especially an insurance contract. It is implied and assumed that the insured party that's about to be insured will disclose all material facts within their private knowledge to the insurer, so that the insurer can make a proper assessment of the risk and make an informed decision whether to insure them or not. That's all I have for you in this video. I'll see you in my very next video. Leave me comments in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe. Toodles!